Welcome to SVN3E Environmental Science. This is Wendy Espana, and we are on lesson 17 tonight, dealing with workplace hazards. So we have been talking a lot about how we can be environmentally conservative at home and in our workplace, how we can be energy efficient at home and in our workplace, ways to reduce, recycle, reuse, and recover. Lots of different suggestions in the last little bit. Okay, so now we're on to dealing with workplace hazards. So to get a better idea of what that's going to be about, let's go over to the next page. We're going to be in the booklet, starting just off to look at the learning goals for this lesson. Students will be able to identify and describe some common workplace hazards, biological and chemical, and describe methods of minimizing risks in the workplace and home. Okay, so there may be hazards, but we want to talk about how you go about having that minimized. Okay, I'll put that on pause for a second, and I'm going to go over to the textbook now. And we're going to be on page 136 of the textbook. There we go. Hopefully you can see that on the screen now. Okay, we're in section 5.2, dealing with workplace hazards. That is lesson 17. All right, we know that there's lots of dangers at home and there's lots of dangers in the workplace. And it is important that we know about them, we know how to avoid them, and what to do if we come across one of these dangers. Okay, so types of hazards we're going to look at can be for workplaces, there could be biological, there could be chemical, physical, any workplace you go into that is going to have these types of hazards. You should have training in first aid for sure, and you should know about the hazards before you go into the workplace and what to do, like I said, in case you run into one of the hazards. All right, the first one we're going to talk about on page 136 in lesson 17 is biological hazards. Biological hazards mean those are hazards that can cause a disease. And remember, those diseases can be caused by pathogens, things that cause disease. That's just a fancy word for things that cause diseases. So those could be bacteria, viruses, the little microbes, protozoa, or fungi. Remember how we talked earlier about bacteria called listeria? It caused people to die from a meat packing facility, and the people in the facility accidentally exposed to it. They weren't following proper cleaning methods at the plant. People who ate products from there got sick and died. That was listeria, it was bacteria. Salmonella is another common pathogen. It's naturally in the environment, and improper food handling or, improperly preparing chicken in particular can produce food poisoning. Places where you'd be most likely to get in contact with biological hazards are like restaurants, food processing plants that we already mentioned, dairies, that's where they produce milk, farms, obviously, because you're around a lot of the poultry, livestock, things that may cause illnesses. Hospitals, right? Hospitals, if you're a nurse or a doctor working one-on-one with patients who are sick, it's a place that you could get an environmental hazard or biological hazard. Veterinary clinics, right? Coming in contact with animals that are carrying some illness. And then pet stores, which is very similar to veterinary clinics, and then doctors' offices. And in order to keep track of some of these, there's inspectors. They go in and they make sure that places that are producing food are safe. So you would have inspectors go into restaurants, make sure that they go in, they look at how meats and food, not just meat, but I was thinking chicken and meat is being processed, what cleaning methods they're using, how they're storing the food. Remember we talked about how you need to store um, food in a fridge at a certain temperature, food in a freezer at a certain temperature, how you don't want cross-contamination between foods, right? So you want a very clean area that's constantly sterilized. And you also want to have everything kept apart that could contaminate each other. If you look on page 136 on figure 5.8, you can see that there's some signs from restaurants. So these were posters that were put up at restaurants. You'll see the one there on page 136, figure 5.8. This is the first one's a conditional pass from the Toronto Public Health. Second one says a pass, and the third one says closed. So these would be signs that would be put up to make sure the restaurants were following proper hygiene and making sure that everything was cleaned properly in the restaurant. The thing with biological hazards is they can usually be avoided. And one way to do that is to make sure that the work environment's clean. So if you're working in a restaurant or anywhere that's working with food that's going to be sold to the public, you want to make sure the work environment's very clean and actually sterile. You want to make sure that it's inspected, the machinery, the knives, the cutting boards, everything they're using, the fridges, the stoves, the grills, everything they're using to clean or to cook is kept sterile and clean, and that there's no pathogens there that would cause any harm to the public. And then you want to sterilize or pasteurize substances where the milk and I'm sorry, from the milk, that's an example. Sterilize and pasteurize substances where pathogens can breed. So potting soil, for example, could be pasteurized, and that way it kills any bad bacteria that's going to grow and cause any harm. Maybe milk, right, is pasteurized. Pasteurization is a process from Louis Pasteur, and it is a process developed. Let me see, when was pasteurization developed? Here it is. It's a process that involves heating the liquid like milk to specific temperatures for a set period to destroy harmful microorganisms, making it safe to consume. So at one point, milk had to be drank right away. Now with pasteurization, it does last for a little bit longer. Okay. Next on our list. Sorry, I don't know why this is not in full screen mode. Sorry about that. It should have been on the full screen mode. I forgot to do that. All right, chemical hazards. All right, so we looked at biological. Now we're going to look at chemical hazards. You'll see we're at the top of page 137. Those are dangers posed by chemicals that have toxic or harmful effects on the body. We've done a lot of work on this, looking at chemicals that can be harmful, okay? Remember, if the effect is acute, that means it's dangerous right away. It's an immediate danger. And if it's chronic, it's dangerous to be exposed to that over a long term. What forms are the danger in? Remember, they can be fumes or vapors or a gas coming off of something, giving off toxic gas, vapors, fumes. Could be a liquid, the dust, right? The particulate matter. We talked a lot about that. Or it could be a solid of some sort. Maybe it could be a solid producing some of those. There are a lot of chemicals used in different workplaces. They can use to make something that you're making at the workplace, or they could use to clean, right? A lot of times we use chemicals for cleaning. If you look at the example in figure 5.9, that's a bottle of bleach. It says bleach is safe when used as directed. Bleach is safe, but heavy on the used as directed. You want to be careful with bleach that you're not burning your eyes, your passageways when you breathe in your nose and your mouth, or getting it on any of your skin, that type of thing. So yeah, it's safe as long as you're careful with it. However, um, it it could be extremely poisonous if it's mixed with the wrong thing. So you have to be very careful that you don't mix it with something that's now going to give you a chlorine gas. It's a poison, yellowy green gas. It will kill you, chlorine gas. And so if you're using chlorine and you're mixing it with the wrong thing and you get, you're using bleach. Sorry, I meant to say bleach. You mixed it with the wrong thing, you get chlorine gas. It could be toxic. Okay. Chlorine is used in making plastic solvents, pesticides. Chlorine could be in your drinking water. It could be in a swimming pool, right? Because it kills pathogens. So it could be in substances that are actually safe to use. And if it's very low amounts, it's okay. However, the if you have it in a large amount, in a concentrated form, then you really start to get to some dangerous areas. So remember we talked a little bit about chronic diseases caused by chemicals before. Silicosis is the one they're mentioning in page 137. It's caused by inhaling silica, SiO2. And it's a dust. Silica is a fine dust. It is used in, well, I guess it's produced from mining. Silica dust is sometimes a byproduct of mining other elements. It can also be used to make things. I'm thinking glass, maybe, ceramics, things like that. Silica is that. However, if you inhale it, it causes silicosis, and that's very serious. You do not want silicosis. It can be a deadly disease. Let's look at what silicosis. If you have symptoms, it's a persistent cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, and fatigue. And the early symptoms are mild, but as you get sicker with it, you get a chronic cough that causes you to spit stuff up, weakness and fever. And you could have your legs swell up, bluish discoloration of your lips, and night sweats, fever, pain, and chest pain. And that means that you are very sick. And and it and then eventually it can cause death. So it's really important if you are exposed to silica dust that you use a respirator. And we talked about respirators earlier in the course. And you could, just using a little mask isn't going to be good enough. You need to have a particular filter or something really designed to protect you if you're going to work in an environment that has silica in it, or anything that is going to cause a chronic illness. You want to be really careful that you're not just inhaling that freely in your environment. Okay, table 5.5 shows some of the chemicals and the hazards and their levels. So in construction, hydrochloric acid's used and it cleans concrete and it has a high hazard level. Hydrochloric acid, again, in small doses, we have it in our stomach. It helps protect our digestive system and other systems because the idea is that anything you eat, if it does have a pathogen in it, will get killed by the acid in your stomach. So cleaning concrete is the use in a industry, and it has a high level of hazard level. Hydrofluoric acid, another very similar acid, also a high level. It's used to clean bricks and to etch glass, so it can actually make carvings on glass. So it's also very high hazard level. Calcium hydroxide, CaOH, has a high hazard level as well. It's used to make cement. All right, once you have it made, it's no longer an issue, but to make the cement itself, it's an issue. Okay, we have farms and nurseries. We already know these ones. We're going to have pesticides. They're used to control diseases and to make our to get rid of unwanted maybe weeds, perhaps, or a plant that's growing we don't want in an area. We use pesticide. It is a high hazard level. You have to be very careful with pesticides. They can be very toxic. Fertilizers, low to medium hazard level. They boost plant growth. They're good for growing plants. But we know fertilizers can cause all sorts of issues in the environment. We know that fertilizers can boost the plant growth initially. However, then there can be runoff into water systems. We could have it leach through the soil into the groundwater. And what you can get is algal blooms, where you have too much vegetation growing in a lake or a pond because of the fertilizers that have come from where you wanted them in a field, perhaps for farming. Now they're in a local water supply, and the fertilizers cause these algal blooms, which then cause all sorts of havoc in that they cover the lower plants' sunlight. And so now you don't have sunlight getting down to the lower parts of a lake or a river or wherever they're trying to grow. So they could have a low hazard level health-wise, low to medium hazard level, but they can wreak havoc with the actual ecosystem. Health services, veterinary clinics, chemicals or drugs. Yeah, you just always want to be careful if you're dealing with any drugs, whether they're good for the patient or not, or what's happening. They have a high hazard level. Their uses are to treat diseases, but often if they are not used properly, they can also be deadly. And sterilizing agents, things that kill microbes, kill pathogens and bacteria, viruses, etc. They have a high hazard level. Even though you're trying to kill pathogens with them, if they're not used properly, they can also have a high hazard level. Okay, resource extraction is the industry. We're talking about mining, basically. The chemicals for mining are explosives. They break rock, log jams, that type of thing. Construction as well, right? You've got lots of times you have explosives. They have a very high hazard level and they can cause a lot of damage to an ecosystem. So those have to be very, very used in a very controlled way. Fuels for vehicles and heating and running equipment of any sort, you would use different fuels. They have a medium to high. We know gasoline can be very toxic if it's ingested at all. Makes you very dizzy, nauseated, can cause brain damage if it's used like around it chronically. In manufacturing, we have sulfuric acid. That's what's in batteries. It's also used for cleaning metals. It has a very high hazard level. It'll eat right through your skin, right through your clothing. You want to be extremely cautious if you're using sulfuric acid. Any solvents are things that dissolve paint they dissolve different things that you're trying to clean up maybe. They have a low to high hazard level depending on what you're using them for and what solvent you're using. They're mostly used for cleaning, but again, you want to be extremely careful you don't get it on your skin, in your eyes, any inhaling of it. And then there's petrochemicals. Those are chemicals made from petroleum products, and they can be used to make plastics, oils, paints, dyes and they have a low to high depending on, again, which petrochemical it is and what's concentration and how it's being used. The thing with chemical hazards, just like biological hazards, is the hazard can be minimized with proper care and training. You have to make sure that whatever chemical you're using, you know how to use it safely. You're trained in its safe use. You know how to store it safely. It's in proper containers for storage. They are all labeled, locked up. You know, remember from our work on WHMIS, what symbols are on it, what the dangers are, what the first aid is used if somebody gets some into their system, and they should all be locked in a safe area. So if you're going to be working with chemicals that are hazardous, you want to make sure they're in a storage cabinet and that you know who has access to the keys, so that trusted people are the only people allowed near the chemicals, people who have been trained to know what they're doing with them. And you should also keep an eye on expiry dates. They should be you do not want to keep anything that's past its expiry date. And you need to get rid of those. Whether it's your home or work, in your home, you should be doing the same thing. If you have products that are expired, you should safely get rid of them. And you need to check for your community how you go about doing that safely. There's laws, there's your local municipal or in your community rules about getting rid of chemicals, provincial and federal laws. And you can also hire people for chemical disposal. I'm not sure in this area. Let's see if there's anybody. It does cost money. And depending on what there's an annual municipal hazardous waste collection event. Okay, those with hazardous waste, larger quantities of chemical waste, you need to contract if it's bigger than just what you can save up for the annual hazardous waste collection. Otherwise, there is a date when you could get rid of household hazardous waste. Okay. It says here that private hazardous waste disposal companies can handle the safe collection, transportation, and disposal or recycling of chemicals according to strict regulations. Okie dokie. All right. The next one is physical hazards. Those are a threat to our body, right? Threat to our physical bodies. Um, Amazingly enough, most work environments, even if you only work in an office, could have physical hazards, okay? And they might not look dangerous at first. If you look at the figure 5.10, however, you will see that those workers are exposed to some really dangerous hazards. The first one is a window washer in a hanging off the side of a building. So that would be much more of a danger than it being in an office, say. And the one on the right is somebody breaking apart, looks like concrete with a drill. So you would look at those and you would think, okay, those there are obvious physical hazards, right? You're working up at a height. You have something like that drill is going to make a lot of noise and vibration. And so you want to make sure that you're have the proper protective gear, and you'll see they both do. One person has a harness. It looks like he's got several safety devices on his harness hanging from the side of the building. Hard hat. The worker on the right looks like they have protective gear on. They have a face mask, helmet, gloves, all sorts of ways they're keeping themselves safe there. Even an office, let's talk about some of those. It could be a wet floor, somebody spilled something, or they've been mopping the floor because they're washing the floors. There's usually cones and signs that say careful with wet floor. Could be a loose carpet or something that you can trip on. Furniture that's in the way that's not usually there. Those are all hazards and should all be moved out of the way. And you should be careful with all of those. Okay, if you're working with lifting something heavy, very important you don't harm your back by doing any heavy lifting. That can be very dangerous. If you work with any machinery, then you want to be very careful that you understand how to operate the machine safely and that you're following all the safety protocols while you're working on the machinery. I think of the people working on the highway here, the highway from Sioux out to the main Trans-Canada Highway has been under construction all summer. And many of those people have to wear the orange vests and hard hats and safety boots and all that type of thing when they're working on the machinery and even just standing by the side of the road. Fishing could involve machinery, depending on the size of the boat you're on and what you're using to bring in nets or however you're fishing. Also, it could be wet, slippery, right? The wind, different types of weather. So you want to be extremely careful if you're on that type of environment. Airports have all sorts of fumes, noise. Those you'd want to be very careful to wear earplugs, protect your hearing if you're exposed to a lot of that. And then construction we just mentioned, but those include not just the highway construction, but construction jobs as in building things, welding, plumbing, all those kinds of things. They all have physical hazards. So you want to be careful that if you're working at any of these types of jobs, that you have the right training on the equipment you're using and you're making sure that you're safe. Your employers must give you training on how to be safe if you're in hazardous situations, and they must show you how to use safety equipment. And they have to be certain that you are following the proper safety procedures. Okay, those are the hazards that we've just went through. Now, we're going to do our first set of check your understanding questions. This is on page 138 of the textbook. And the question one says, how are workplace hazards classified? And that question is worth 3 marks because there's 3 ways that workplace hazards are classified. List all 3 ways. Question number 2 on page 138 says, what is the best way to protect yourself when using chemicals in your workplace? And that is worth 1 mark. And there is one really important way that you want to be safe in your workplace when using chemicals. All right, minimizing the risks. Remember, we talked about that if we can just cut back on the electricity we use, we don't have to use as much electricity. The same goes for safety. The best protection against any hazard is to be aware of it and to be careful, to be aware and to be safe and put safety first and foremost, and do not allow others to not to behave in an unsafe way. So you want everybody to be following the safety rules, you in particular. Okay, so you need to know where the hazards are in a workplace and a map at each workplace, especially if it has quite a few safety issues. You should have a map of where they are. You'll see there's an example in figure 5.11. They have the different chemicals marked on their map. They have the biological hazards marked and the physical hazards. So everybody would be able to look at that and know that if you're going into that storage room, to be careful. It's going to have some dangerous chemicals, maybe biological hazards, and that they want to be careful with that. Okay. Knowing material hazards is means that we know what the symbols mean at workplace or in your home on products, what the symbols mean that tell you what hazards are. Even if you're just working in your own home, you should know what the hazard symbols are. It's very important you're aware of them. And there's two sets of symbols that we use for this purpose. And you should know when you see what the hazard symbol, what to do. In case of an accident, you should know how to administer first aid. You should understand what the harm is that happens when the materials get into the soil, water, or atmosphere, and how they can be harmful. Okay, HHPS, hazardous household product symbols. They're those symbols at the bottom of page 139, and they alert people to the hazards of consumer products. It could be, those can be on any item in your house or at work that's hazardous. It has 4 different shapes of symbols. You can see the 4 shapes of symbols there. And you can see there's the corrosive is the sorry, I'm just figuring out which way I'm going across here. Yes, the octagon is no, sorry, corrosive is the symbol inside. The octagon means that the item is dangerous. Sorry, that's what it means. The octagon means the item is dangerous. The triangle, the upside down triangle, means that the object is more than dangerous. Yes, I'm going to just look up what I'm sorry, I'm having a moment here of HHPS symbols. Let me just, it's been a little while since I've done this. Okay, here we go. Alrighty. Okay, so the octagon is dangerous. A triangle, which I'm not sure why they're not showing a triangle there, but triangle symbol means that it's a warning. And the upside down symbol, it means that it's caution. So the octagon's the highest level of danger. The sideways square, it's like a diamond shape, is means that it is a warning, and the upside down triangle means caution. All right. Now we look at the symbols inside, and we are going to go look and see what the different symbols mean. So on this one, you can see we have corrosive. It's the skeletal looking hand, meaning if you see that, it could burn skins in your eyes if the chemical touches you. And it could also mean that it would burn your throat, your stomach. It's corrosive. It's going to burn anything that comes in contact with that product. The second one shows fire. That means flammable. It means it can catch fire very easily. Just even a spark could finish that off. Poisonous is if it's inhaled, eaten, drank, if we drink it, all of those means it's going to be toxic. It's going to be poison to us, right? I think most people know that symbol. And then explosive. It can the container can explode if it's heated or punctured. So that'd be some sort of an aerosol can. And those four symbols could be all in the same product. It could be a very dangerous comic, like oven cleaner or something that has lots of dangerous chemicals. So that's a good example of the items that can be on a container at work or at home. And you want to look up and read on the product. You want to see what symbols are on it, how dangerous it is, and then that helps you know how to deal with it properly. Okay, WHMIS is at the top of page 140. Many people have done WHMIS training. WHMIS stands for Workplace Hazardous Materials Information Symbol. They're special symbols that are used on products mostly in the workplace, but they could be on something you have in your house too, so it's good to know them. These have to be on products that have a hazardous material. They should have these symbols on them. And you'll see that they go from into different classifications right there. There's 8 symbols, but it actually could be more now. Let me just double check and see how many current number of WHMIS symbols. We may have to go look up some more online. And it says there are currently 10. So how many do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's just pause for a minute. And I'm just going to go over to, oops, sorry. Going to go over. And we're just going to find current WHMIS symbols. And we'll look through the ones, even though those are the ones given on there. Current WHMIS symbols. Let's go look at the ones that are online right now. And I'm just getting it on the screen here. And then we will look at, okay. There we go. All right, they're on the screen. And I'm going to go back and share that now. There we go. Okie dokie. All right, the WHMIS symbols are shown there. The first one is, it looks like a tank of gas. That's compressed gas. The next one looks like something on fire. So that is flammable material. The next one is an O in the middle of the flames. That's oxidizing. Oxidizing means it can cause something to go on fire. The next one over shows something exploding. That means it could explode. It's an explosion hazard. Harmful or fatal is the skull and crossbones, right? We know that. That's like poisonous, toxic. The symbol on the next line, the first symbol that says biohazardous infectious, that's important that if you see that, you're extremely careful because it could have viruses, bacteria, pathogens, which could be you could make you sick right away. The next one is corrosive. That means it can burn your skin, your eyes. You want to be very careful about that getting onto your body and to check right away what to do if it does. Health hazard means it could cause cancer, damage your organs, that's parts inside your body, and maybe the ability to have healthy children. So that one's very important that you're extremely careful with. The exclamation mark is harmful. So maybe not as severe, but still can cause health issues. And the last one is harmful to the environment. So that one means that you can't just throw it in the dump. You want to be careful when you're disposing of that one. It shows tree and water, and you want to be careful that you're not just throwing that out, that you're going to take care to make sure that it's used properly, it's used properly and disposed of properly. Okay, we're going to go back to our textbook lesson. You'll see that on, I'm just going to go back. There we go. So hopefully you can see those ones there on page 140. You'll see there that there's this, all of the symbols are the same. There's a dangerously reactive material symbol that we did not have in the other one, and a T with an exclamation mark, and the ones we just saw, it was just an exclamation mark, meaning materials causing other toxic events. So, okay, the point being, if you see WHMIS symbols, find out what this symbol means and make sure you get treated right away if you get anything spilled on you, etc. Okay, prevention and protection at the bottom of page 140. So we're going to look at prevention and protection. If, yes, there's accidents, but we also want to do our best to avoid having any accidents occur. So there's 3 ways that they suggest on page 140 to do this. At the hazard source is one place that you can begin prevention and protection, along the path to the worker, and at the worker by using safety equipment. So the first one we're going to discuss is at the hazard source. So eliminating or minimizing the source of a hazard is the best means of preventing accidents. Usually costs the most as well, but it is what you want to do to make sure that accidents don't happen is by making sure the hazard is under control, that you don't have toxic fumes, materials causing your people to get sick. Okay, if we look at the top of page 141, along the path is the second best means of preventing accidents. They're less expensive if you can control it along the path. So you're looking at machinery, maybe that's dangerous. You'll see the figure 5.14 is an example, and it has guards on the wheel, the blade, and there's a guard again. So it's a piece of equipment that has all sorts of safety parts to it, and you want to make sure that it's difficult to get hurt, it's difficult to get killed, okay? And you only have the part exposed that's actually going to cut the wood or the metal or whatever you're working. Okay, the worker having safety equipment is the least costly way. Personal protective gear is the most important, right? Safety glasses, face shields, helmets, air purifying masks, respirators, all of those. If you're working with a hazardous chemical, you want to make sure you're using all those in order to keep yourself safe. Okay. But personal safety gear is used for short time. Like you're going to have short exposure to the chemical, the gas, the fumes, whatever. You're going to have short time exposure. And you're not going to be using that chemical for a long period of time, having to wear all that equipment. At the source, hopefully you've contained the danger and along the path so that by the time the worker is there working, they don't have to be constantly dealing with the dangerous chemicals. There's a picture there. Figure 5.15 shows workers who are handling hazardous materials, and you'll see they're all got gloves and full body gear there. They even have respirators with tanks, so they're breathing in oxygen through their masks. And you can tell that that must be a very, very dangerous chemical that they're using there in order, they must have to be extremely safe. Okay, we are at the bottom of page 141, and we're looking at question number 1. It is worth 3 marks. Sorry, not 3 marks, it's worth 4 marks. Sorry, page 141 is worth 4 marks, half a mark for each one. It's got 8 different WHMIS symbols, and you have to say which one is which. So for the first one, biohazardous infectious materials, use the ones from page 140, not the ones we just saw online, because they're slightly different. So page 140, you would want to look at biohazardous infectious materials, and you would go over and say, oh, number 6. So you would write number 6 in front of that. And then corrosive material, go look at page 140 and have a look. And you would see, oh, there's corrosive material. In this one, it's number 7, and write in number 7. Okay, so you're going to fill all those in. It's really good to begin to know the WHMIS symbols, know the HHPS symbols, and be ready if you see them on a product, be ready to know what to do in case of an accident or in case there's spillage or anything like that. Okay, we're going over to page 143. And we're going to do have a look at the review questions to wrap up tonight's lesson. Question 1 says, in what types of jobs would you have to protect yourself from biological hazards? Okay, there's specific jobs that you have biological hazards. So we want to know what we would, what are those types of jobs that have biological hazards? It's worth 1 mark, but I would list a couple just to get full marks. Okay, the next question jumps down to question 4. It says, describe 3 biological say that again. Describe 3 ways biological hazards can be avoided. That's question 4, and it's 3 marks. So there's 3 things you can do when you're in a workplace with biological hazards that can help to avoid those hazards. All right, and we've already just finished talking about a couple. So you want to make sure you go through those and list 3 of those because it's worth 3 marks. Question 6, identify a job of your choice and describe 3 physical hazards that may be present in that workplace. So that's any job. It can be a job that you're thinking of doing perhaps one day, something you would like to do. And you want to think about that job, and you want to think about what risks there are associated with that job. So what are the hazards? And we want to look at physical hazards. And it could be something like working in your office, or it could be something, a job that you do already and you're well aware of the physical hazards, that type of thing. Okay. Question 8. What are 2 key things you should know about in any workplace before starting work? So before you begin a job, what should you know about that workplace before you begin? And they gave some really good examples of things that can help you prepare for that in lesson 17. So you want to go back and look those up. Question number 8 is worth 2 marks. And question number 9, what does HHPS mean? Okay, so number 9, what does HHPS mean? So you want to go back and look up what the meaning of that one was. And then number 10 is worth 2 marks. What's the difference between an inverted triangle and an octagon shape on an HHPS symbol? So you want to go back and have a look at those symbols back on page 139. And they tell you in the paragraph right above those pictures what the symbols mean. Okay, so you want to know if it's remember, and if you want Remember, we looked them up? You could look up what the different symbols mean as well. And question number 10 was worth 2 marks. Question 11 says, what are 3 best ways to protect workers from workplace accidents? Okay, so you want to, these are ways that you should be aware of before you go into any workplace. You want to know what's the best way to protect yourself from workplace accidents when you step onto a job, and to keep yourself safe. There's all sorts of good training, and if we had time, I would go through some of them. There's maybe we'll begin our next class by looking at some of the training you can do for workplace safety. There's some great training out there. That's it for tonight. We are done our work on safety in the workplace and at home, looking at how to make sure we're aware of the hazards in our workplace and at home. Our next lesson, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit, and we're going to look at making buildings efficient. And that's important because remember, if we have less energy to keep our homes cool in the summer, warm in the winter, then we will have to produce less electricity. All right, that's it for tonight's lesson. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you at our next lesson. Have a good evening.